Thank you, Chairperson, and good morning, Minister. Minister, you reference that you're in favour of inclusive education and that you want to aspire to that. But the special units you proposed a few weeks ago couldn't be further from inclusion if you tried. Is that proposal completely withdrawn at this stage? Because we all know that children will blossom if they're in the correct setting with sufficient resources, and that's what we want to see. And I know it's necessary now to bring in the emergency legislation because there are insufficient places this year, but it's something that's happening year after year. And the NCSE were here last week and they indicated that they have regular meetings with you and with the Department of Education, and they have the data on how many children have additional needs. So I'm wondering why there isn't proper planning to ensure that there are sufficient places, especially for children progressing from primary to post-primary, because they're in primary for 8 years and their needs have to be known. So, we know that they're going to need a place in a post-primary school in their area. Also, in relation to the NCSE, I welcome the fact that you recognise they need additional resources and will be providing those. And I would also say NEPS is in need of additional resources as well, because I think it was pointed out last week that the number of CNOs employed by the NCSE is actually less now than it was when it was first established. So that's something I think that needs to be addressed. There's also the issue of the number of students who have to travel outside their area to access appropriate education. There's over 15,000 children travelling. That's quite an expense. There's one area in Dublin, I know it's costing over 72,000 a day to bus children to appropriate school placements outside of their area. So, also, there are 1,455 students in receipt of home tuition. Now, that may be the choice for some, but for many it's not. It's because the school placement has broken down and they were unable to access an appropriate school placement. So I'm just wondering what plans you have to address those issues. Also, it's been referred that we need more places within our schools for children with additional needs, but the place isn't just the only thing that's needed. We need more qualified teachers, SNAs, and resources, sensory rooms, etc. I have been told of cases where a young teacher, newly qualified, has been told by the principal, "Oh, you take the special class for a year or two, and then we'll give you a full-time position." That's not fair on the children. Those teachers are not qualified. It's not fair on the teacher either. But many of the teachers will do their utmost to teach those children, but then they'll move on. So it's not fair on the children who are not getting appropriate education. And I suppose you haven't referenced summer provision either in your speech there, and I'm just wondering what are the plans to improve that scheme, because something needs to happen drastically. It's too late for this year, but for next year something needs to happen. Thank you.
I'll try and answer as best I can. Obviously, just first of all, in relation to any proposal that the department comes up with, it would need to be in agreement with the Special Education Consultative Forum, whom I set up, who is composed of advocacy groups and other stakeholders. So any proposals effectively would need their sign-off. So that's just in relation to that. Just in terms of the legislation and the planning, you'll be aware of the fact that over the last 2 years, and even the Ombudsman for Children did note and acknowledge the work over the last 2 years in terms of our forward planning. We have now a GIS forecasting model where data is shared in real time from the Planning and Building Unit with the NCSE. That wasn't done before, so that should help in terms of forward planning into the future. And also the fact that now we also have a commitment from the department that all new schools will automatically provide an SEN base into the future. So like 1,000 post-primary school will have 4 classrooms, and then pro rata for medium and smaller schools after that. So that should make a big difference. I just might mention to you as well around the Inspectorate report on provision of students with autism specifically, and that was a report that was published back in March 2022, and we're in the process now of setting up a working group around that because obviously COVID interrupted. But I think some of the main findings are pertinent to your question. So some schools we found are operating restrictions in their enrolment policies at primary and post-primary. So some post-primary schools explicitly prioritise enrolment for students with higher cognitive functioning or for students who could easily integrate into mainstream classes, which was thereby denying places for students with more complex needs. And in fact, the enrolment policy for post-primary special classes was found to be clear in just half of the settings. So the evidence would suggest that learners with more pronounced autism needs and co-occurring learning needs encounter difficulties enrolling in special classes in these primary and post-primary schools, and some of them are directed towards home tuition or indeed special schools. And the report also indicated that some students' placement in a special class is inappropriate. There were students who should have been fully enrolled in mainstream classes because their needs didn't merit a special class support. And there was also an issue around placement reviews. So I think it's important to sort of to note that in the context of your question. Just then around, you mentioned around transport, there are 15,500 children travelling. You're correct on that, and we don't dispute what the Children for Ombudsman is saying. That's at a cost of 289 million a year. The first duty I think that we have is to find an appropriate placement for a child. And then our second task is to try to make sure that they can attend a placement in their locality. I know in your particular, in Cavan there's 46 special classes and there's one special school, and there's 36 in Monaghan at present. But obviously it's completely, desirable that a child would go in the school in their locality, but it's not always completely possible. Summer provision, then we are putting 40 million, as you know, into that this year. We expect an increase. We're hoping to about 48,000 to participate this year. There were about 38,000 last year. There has been an increase in an uptake with special schools and classes over the last 2 years. And we've also inclusion programs as well for, Ukrainians and others as well.